Okay, hi everybody. This is Gary Wilson. Hope you all are doing okay. It is exactly 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Obviously, brand new platform. So the cool thing is I'm glad we switched platforms. I got a feeling this is going to be so much easier, guys. I love GoToWebinar for years, but you know there were some complications there, and we just didn't want to continue in that vein. So we decided to move up and join everybody else who's on Zoom. So in any case, we are live, we are recording. Let me just check the participants here. Okay, let's see, pin list, attendee list. Awesome, good. Lisa, Shirley, Jorge, how you doing, Jorge? Chris, Cedric, good to see you guys. I literally just finished a class, so I haven't been able to, normally I have time between class and the webinar, but that's just not the case here. So anybody that sent me emails for tonight's webinar, please forgive me. I'll have to get to them and apply them to next week's webinar. Otherwise, normal emails I'll just get back to when I get finished up tonight. So in any case, tonight's session, we're going back to property management. What we're going to do focus tonight on is this. Let me get my notes here. Okay, in the training program for property management, it's called Turning Rental Problems into Real Estate Profits. We're going to focus on modules 3 and 4. Now, many of you don't have that program. You're in other programs like investor agent, flipping, buying rentals, so forth and so on, wholesaling. The reason this has become such a hot topic is because we're not the only smart people on the planet, and some large brokerage companies are now looking at property management as an official offering. So we get lots of questions on this. We've got to take it seriously. So tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed you through the 2 modules, which are screening tenants, and then some special like Section 8 tenants, things like that, and also what we call protected classes. We're going to do that tonight. It'll take about 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, and then we'll wrap that up. And then we'll do another session on the 10th of June for property management. Next week on the 3rd of June, we actually have a special guest. I believe we do anyways. Hang on one second. Let's see here. The 3rd, or maybe it is the 10th, excuse me. Maybe it's the 10th. Hang on one second. Yes, so I'm sorry, on the 11th, Albert is going to be on with his partner when it comes to trust. So on the 10th, guys, if you're ever interested, how do we do trust with real estate? Well, that's what the June 11th webinar is going to be on. Okay. Tonight, property management. Next week, we'll do a 3rd leg of property management. Okay. Now, I will tell you this: latter half of June, we're going to start getting to some social media marketing. Okay, because we've been asked about that a lot too. But for tonight, it's all about property management. So real quick, before we get into a lot of details, guys. If you could do me a favor, if you're listening to this or watching this in recorded mode, just make sure, whatever the case is, if you're live now or recorded, listen to this in recorded mode, always get the email the next day from Beverly, because it's going to give you changes like changing this platform from GoToWebinar to Zoom, okay? There's announcements, there's things we're doing to the other changes we're making, scheduling changes, things like that. So always keep up with that. And as far as, let's see here, as far as questions go, I'm looking to see where you can type in your questions. Chats, you can click on chat, and I'll be able to get your questions on chat, okay? So what I'm going to do right now is use chat to ask questions. From time to time, I'll unmute you, and we'll have you live on this session, okay? But what I'll do right now is I'm going to share my screen. So hang on one second here. So we're going to share the screen. Let's see, what else am I looking at to give you? Here it is. Okay, we're going to share my document. So this is the training manual for turning rental problems into real estate profits, i.e. property management. So the first one we're going to talk about tonight is screening tenants, okay? And I'm going to kind of slow down, so I want you to make sure you can take notes on this, all right? Especially if you're not in that program, you definitely want to take notes on this, okay? Because the reality is either you're an investor, and if you're buying rentals, you need to know this anyways for your own properties. If you're an agent representing investors, you're going to get contacted and asked, can you do this? And most agents would say no, of course, which makes it more profitable for those that say yes. But the point is, you want to be able to walk the talk If you don't want to do it yourself directly, you want to be able to talk about it intelligently and also be able to refer them to other people who are doing property management that you can do an effective job of screening on behalf of your brokerage clients, okay? So it's an extremely important subject. It's a soft spot in the business. Quite frankly, a lot of parts of the US and Canada actually kind of stink at it, and that's why companies like mine, when I had my own property management company, thrive so much, because everybody else kind of sucked at it, right? So in any case, back to this, we're going to talk about screening first. There's different levels to screening, okay? Multiple steps. So let's just go back. If you remember the last session, we talked about property management a week or two ago. We left off on the marketing phase. Marketing, advertising, how do you advertise vacancies, so forth and so on. So let's assume now, we're just going to paint the picture here. You're starting to get phone calls, okay? Now, first things first is, I don't use your own personal cell phone. If you have a landline, don't use your own personal phone number there either. Have a separate dedicated number, either a landline or a cell phone, that's just for tenant interaction, okay? You're going to just know that you want to do that, okay? You'll be glad you did later on. So one of the reasons is when you advertise a unit for rent, you're likely to get a lot of phone calls. And those phone calls can come at any time of night or day. So what we do is we use the separate phone number as a screening mechanism. We let them call and leave a message on purpose, okay? You don't want to talk to them directly on the spot live when they call. There's a number of reasons for that, which I'm going into here. So number one is, you've already put an ad in the paper, an ad online, on Craigslist, wherever you're advertising, church bulletin, okay? And you put in there enough information to in itself be a screening mechanism. In other words, your ad is also a screening tool. You put in there 3-bedroom, 1 bath, whatever the case is, 3rd floor, 5th floor, 1st floor, single family home, whatever the case is, because you want to give people enough information so that only the people who want a 3-bedroom with a 1 bath on a 5th floor are the ones that are going to call you. If you don't put enough information in, you're going to get lots of calls you don't want, because they're going to say, oh, wait a second, that's an apartment on the 5th floor? No, I don't want that. So do yourself a favor, put enough information in the ad so that they can pre-screen themselves. Saves you time. Now, the other thing too is, the reason we want them to leave a message is you can gather information on the message that they leave you. And let's face it, if they don't leave a message, maybe you don't want to talk to them anyways, okay? So assuming they left a message and they give you their contact information, you can pull out what's called a telephone screening form, okay? It's in the material in the training program, telephone screening form. You fill it out initially with what the information is they gave you on the message, on the voicemail they left, name, phone number, whatever they gave you. They might even say, hey, we got 3 kids, we definitely need a 3-bedroom apartment, et cetera, et cetera. All good information, start filling out your form, telephone screening form. Now, you definitely want to call people back, okay? Anybody that leaves you a message, do not call them back. Always please call them back, okay? You don't want to be accused of not playing fairly or something like that, or worse yet, discrimination. Okay, so always call people back that leave a message. Now, when you call them back, you're going to have a telephone questionnaire form. And on there, you know what, doggone it, I don't have one with me here right now. I'm actually in a market center, and I don't have my material with me. But just know this, you can get what's called a telephone questioning form. And there, it's almost like an application. In fact, it looks an awful lot like an application. So you're going to call them back, and you're going to start asking them some very pertinent questions, okay? The first thing is this. You want to make sure that they're what you have meets their needs as far as living arrangements. So verify, ask them, how many bedrooms do you need? And of course, they should say, well, I need 3, because they responded to your ads in this example that has advertising 3 bedrooms. And what they might say is, well, I've got 5 kids. We need as many bedrooms as we can get. And right away, you got 5 children and potentially 2 parents. That's 7 people. Can your 3-bedroom unit handle 7 people? Okay, and by the way, there's occupancy laws you need to abide by too. So you need to know, based on your local occupancy codes, how many occupants they will allow you to have in a 3-bedroom unit in this example. So you can tell them if they only allow, in your area, that the municipality only allows 2 people per bedroom, and i.e. 6 people for a 3-bedroom unit, and they got 7 people, they're disqualified. Don't even go any further. Just the law, and you just tell them, I'm sorry, got too many people. They need a 4-bedroom unit, right? So in any case, first things first is make sure there's suitability between them and the unit that's advertised for sale. Right off the bat, get that out of the way. Okay. The next thing is ask them where are they currently. If they say, well, I live 45 minutes away. Well, think about it. If they have children, they're at school. Do they want to really yank their children out of school? So you want to ask them, say, well, why is it that you're looking to move 45 minutes away? That's going to be a different school district and everything. And then they'll tell you. They'll say, well, I just got a new job assignment. I have to move. I don't have a choice. That's all. You need all this information to determine suitability, okay? If it's close by, ask them, well, how far are you now currently from where your children go to school? And if they're like down the block and you're 5 miles away, ask them, say, you're prepared to drive your children if there's no bus service in this neighborhood. Just all these, I know it sounds like a lot of information, guys, but believe me, the best, easiest, less expensive use of your time is on the initial telephone call. Do as much work there as humanly possible before you ever go meet people at a unit. That's the most expensive use of your time, right? So in any case, also their jobs, where do they work? So you don't have to ask them some detailed questions. You're just asking them general questions. Where do the kids go to school? Where do they work? Things like that. And then by the way, anybody over the age of 18 should be identified. So you want to go ahead and start asking them to give you names of all adults that are going to be residing with them in this apartment, for example. Everybody 18 years or older, okay? Children, you just need to know, they'll tell you how many children they have. Right now, you don't need to know the children's names and things like that. That'll come later. You can get that information if you want, but ages, names, all that kind of stuff. But because they're minors, it's not really critical, and you do have to be careful to not cross the line when it comes to asking proper questions. You don't want to position yourself to be accused of discrimination. All right, familial status, in other words, family status, is one of the protected classes, okay? So in any case, gather all that information, and assuming that everything's a go, then at that point, you go ahead and give them the address, and you tell them to please go drive by the property, please go drive through the neighborhood surrounding the property, whatever the local shopping is, stores, restaurants, things like that, so that they can see bird's eye view that is where in fact they want to be. So I don't ever show apartment to anybody that has not done a drive-by. Okay, so during the week you're having these folks do their drive-bys, right? Now what happens is you tell them, hey, when you're done your drive-by, please call me back, leave a message, let me know, and if you still want to see the unit, we'll schedule an appointment, and we always schedule appointments on Saturdays. Okay, I'll get into that in here in a minute. So essentially you've done your telephone interview. Okay, you've got the telephone. You're going to keep this with you. Now let's say the folks go by, they see the property, they like where it is, they like the way it looks and everything. They want to see the unit itself inside. They'll call you back, you set the appointment. Here's what we do. We only show properties on Saturdays, and we do it in 2-hour intervals, two hours at each unit. So if we got 4 units to show that day, we start at 9 a.m., go 9 to 11, 11 to 1, 1 to 3, 3 to 5. That's really what we do. And then what we do within each unit, we schedule the showings in intervals. So depending on the size of the unit, if it's a large unit, we'll give them 15-minute showtime. If it's like a 3-bedroom unit, if it's a small studio, 1-bedroom unit, 10 minutes should be plenty, right? And what we do is we schedule them every 10 minutes, for example, or in the case of a 3-bedroom unit, we schedule them every 15 minutes. That means in a 2-hour time frame, we can schedule 8 showings. Everybody with me so far? Okay, 8 showings. Now, some people are going to be late, some people are going to be early, some people won't show up, okay? The point is you don't want to be running back and forth to that unit on a one-on-one basis. Just run yourself ragged. It's it's an inefficient use of your time. And again, people sometimes don't show. So we schedule in 2-hour intervals, 8 people, sometimes 12 people, depends on the size of the unit, okay? Now, a couple things could happen. Some people, again, will be early, some people will be late. So sometimes you'll have some overlap. You'll have one family there getting ready they're still looking, and the next family shows up. believe it or not, that actually can work to your advantage, because if you've got a nice looking unit and units are in demand, nice looking units are in demand, and the family coming in now sees there's another family already there, believe me, it creates what's called a sense of urgency, all right? And you'll find yourself getting more applications filled out, okay? So in any case, that's actually not such a bad thing. Now, in the unit, you're talking to them. The reason why I'm going to have you do this in intervals is you want to spend as much time as you can with each person that you're showing your unit to, okay? Again, you're going to have the telephone questionnaire with you that they already filled out. Now, let's say you go through the unit with them and they're satisfied, they want it. Here's what we do. We say, okay, I need to have you fill out an application here before you leave. Don't give them an application to take with them. Have them fill out the application right there on the spot. It's going to create, it's going to show you commitment, okay? They also have to leave a check for the security deposit and a check for first month's rent. Now, depending on where you are, whether you're in Canada or US, there's 50 states in the US and 10 Canadian provinces. In the province of Quebec, did you know that you can't take security deposits? In Montreal, at least, you can't take security deposits, okay? They don't allow it. So in some states, you can collect first month's and last month's and deposit. In some states, you can collect first month's only and deposit. You just have to be careful, know what your state rules are. And by the way, there is a document we have, you have access to, that gives you all of the rules per state. I haven't seen it for Canada, but for US, by state, all of the landlord tenant rules, how much you can accept on deposit, how long you can keep the deposit, all that stuff's in there, okay? How long it takes to evict somebody, that's all in there. So back to this. My personal rule is this on my units. I always take deposit, one check for deposit, one check for first month's rent, okay, in advance. I'm not going to deposit those checks yet. I'm just going to hold them with the application, because that shows me that they are serious and they're contenders, okay? And let's say out of the 8 people, 4 people fill out an application, okay, and give you their checks for the deposit and the first month's rent. Now you want to do what it is. You want to go home and process the applications, okay? And by the way, if they paid you, sorry, there's the third check here, which is the application fee. So the third check, the application fee, is non-refundable. If you're going to run the application, that's sunk cost. That's money you don't get it back. I charge $75 now. Years ago, we charged $25, then it was $35, then it was $50. And I know people that charge more than that, to $100 and $125 for an application fee, kind of steep. But you know what? In certain areas, you can do that. So here's where things get a little bit sticky, guys. Here's my recommendation. If you're going to accept those applications, you should run the applications, okay? Do not run them. That's my personal opinion. There's no law that says you have to, but just know this: if you get 4 applications and you run 2 of them and stop because you got what you want, and you don't run any more, and somebody finds out you never ran their application, they could say, well, you discriminated against them. So just run the applications, okay? In any case, let me do this, guys. I'm going to check the chat box real quick here, because it looks like we got a couple of questions. Okay. Lisa saying she has to log off at 4:30. No problem. Lisa, we'll see you next time. I got about 10 minutes to go here, actually. Cedric, hey, Gary, we use certified checks. Are you okay with a personal check? So here's what I do, Cedric. If I have just a personal check, the check has to be written 2 weeks in advance. In other words, most banks will process a check and clear it within a week. And if there's any type of a bounce back, you'll know within a week. I usually give it 2 weeks. In other words, if they want to rent this unit on June 1st, which is this Saturday, I will have done the showing greater than 2 weeks in advance of the unit being one of them to be rented. And that way I got plenty of time to deposit their checks and make sure they're going to clear, okay? That's what I do. But yes, you can ask for certified checks. The challenge is there's a lot of people, so Cedric, they'll have to go to a bank, get it certified, and then come back to the unit. And a lot of times people just see that as an inconvenience. I will also take credit card information. So years ago I didn't do that, guys, but we have merchant accounts, so we now take credit cards. for rents. And by the way, there's more to that than meets the eye. I'll explain in another session. But the bottom line is this: is a lot of things now the technology is so much more sophisticated than it was 20 years ago. We now have property management systems that have online portals where tenants can pay their rent through the portal. They can log or maintenance requests, things like that, through the portal. And the owners can access information about their units through the portal too, get maintenance reports, get the balance on their account, how much rents come in, how much is paid on expenses. So the cool thing is a lot of those portals can now be linked to merchant accounts where you can accept credit cards and debit cards, okay, for rent payments. In any case, pretty cool stuff. So in any case, let me reduce that so I can go back to the material, back to where I was. All right, so what you do is you run the applications. You're going to get the reports back. The rental applications are generally going to be covering their rental history, where they've lived, their job history, where they've worked, their public record, which is criminal records, and of course their credit rating. Okay, information on, hey, they got a little credit score, and here's the things they're behind on, whatever. 4-part report: credit, public record, living history, we call domicile history, and job history. Okay, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna literally line those up side by side and compare them. And obviously, you're only gonna rent the apartment to one person, so you clearly want to choose the most highly qualified person. All right. It could be the 4th person who gave an application. It could be the 1st one. You just don't know until you run the applications, which is why I encourage you to run all the applications. If you got the money to run it, just run them because you got the money to run them. And what you do is you line them up side by side and compare. The most important requirement, obviously, is the financial requirement. How capable are they of paying this rent on a monthly basis? My general rule of thumb is this: their monthly rent should not be more than 1/3 of their take-home pay, okay, or 1/4 of gross payment or gross pay. But in any case, that's usually works out to be about the same. Then I look at how long they lived at where they live now, and I like to see minimum 1 year tenancy where they live, preferably 3 or more actually. Job history, same thing. Minimum 1 year is acceptable. Anything less than that, I don't like. But the longer the job history, the better, and the longer their domicile history, the better too. Okay. Now, one of the most important things is their public record history, their criminal background. If they've got a felony on their history, I got to tell you guys, I know this sounds cold. I generally won't rent to them. They're not a protected class. Everybody deserves a second chance, no doubt about it. But think about this: is we also have an obligation to all the other tenants in the property that we're renting out, and that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I will tell you, as a general rule, anything that's a felony that involves a crime against another human being, like a crime of violence, armed robbery, rape, assault, things like that, I hands down, flat out, absolutely no. And I actually lost a tenant because of this one time. Great tenant. She was with me for years. And I never knew she had an elderly son. Well, he got out of prison, came home, and she had to report that. She had to register that with the local police. Well, they called me. They said, "Do you know you've got a convicted felon in one of your units?" And I said, "Well, no, I didn't know that. Who is it?" And it was, I can't give the lady's name. She gave me her name, and I said, she's been my tenant for years. She's not a felon. He said, "No, her son." And they said, "We have to tell you what he did." He was accused, basically found guilty of committing terroristic acts. And so right away, I'm like, I couldn't. Betty was her name, by the way. And I lost her, and she was with me for over 7 years. And it broke my heart, but I kept thinking, what about the other people in the area? So in any case, just sorry to run off on a tangent there, but just know this: public record, you definitely got to check that out, guys. Everything can check out in advance, but all of a sudden you see that, and that can be the game breaker right there. So in any case, you're looking at all 4 of those things. And to me, the financial requirements first, how long they live where they live, how long they work where they work, and then public records is the deal breaker if it's there. Go for the most qualified person, notify them right away that they've been approved to rent your unit, okay? And tell them that you're going to cash their check, you're going to deposit their check for security deposit and first month's rent within 24 hours. You're going to give them that notice, give them a day's notice. You're going to deposit those forms, okay? And they also have to meet you within 24 hours to fill out the lease agreement. You don't fill out the lease agreement in advance. You only do that once they've been approved to lease the unit. So within 24 hours, they have to fill out the lease with you, and you've also got the deposit, their security check, their security deposit check, and their first month's rent. That all has to happen the next business day. Okay, we have them come to the office. We don't go meet them. They might say, "Can you meet me at the apartment?" Say, "Nope, you got to come by the office." Okay, they'll do it on their lunch break, whatever they got to do. Okay, so then you got yourself a good tenant locked up. Sorry, wrong phrase there. You got the unit locked up with this tenant. Okay, you got it secured. You got a tenant. You can pull the ad, and you have to notify the other 3 people that they did not get accepted to rent the apartment, and tell them it was simply based on financial reasons. The tenant who got the unit was just simply more qualified. And the good thing about doing that way, that's not a protected class. Somebody can't claim discrimination because you rented it to somebody else who was more qualified than them financially. That's a legal reason. It's the only reason you can legally do that anyways. The only reason you should do it, by the way. So in any case, and make sure it's documented. And by the way, your screening policy, your interviewing policy should be documented. If you do this program, you get all that documentation anyways. We just give it to you, but you want to have it documented so that you can say on your lease application, screening and interviewing policy is available upon demand. Put that in writing. You don't have to give it to them up front. Just say on the application that information is available. Your policy is available on demand. So if anybody ever wants to raise a fuss with you, you're protected. Okay, you've got yourself covered. In any case, that's basically the process there. We'll give you a few more tips here before we move on. And one of them is this. In states where they really are strict on security deposits, like you can only collect 1 month's rent and security deposit, which they will, some states will say cannot be more than the equivalent of 1 month's rent. You're going to see that sometimes, okay? What I do is this, and you can write this down if you want. I will have additional deposits for different reasons. So I'll have the basic security deposit, which is basically an indemnity deposit. So if there's damages to the apartment, that money covers that. But I will also have a cleaning deposit, okay? Because a lot of times people will leave and not clean, all right? And you got to cover that cost. But you want to take it out. You don't want to take it out of the basic security deposit, because let's say they stiff you on the last month's rent, okay? They decide, well, I'm not going to pay the rent, keep the deposit is my rent, and then leave you a dirty, nasty apartment. You don't want to have that happen. So what I do is I collect additional deposits, like cleaning deposit. I also collect pet deposits for people that have pets, okay? I collect as many deposits as I possibly can, in addition to the basic security deposit, okay? That way they've got more incentive to pay the last month's rent and not just leave you with a dirty apartment, okay? That's just one of the things I learned over the years. On another session, I'll give you some other ideas on how you can actually make more money on your rentals, okay? In addition to just running out the basic unit. So in any case, let me move forward, because I think that's pretty much the screening and interviewing process I want to go over. Hey, by the way, there is one more thing I just thought about. You've got the application that they fill out at the unit, right? You also have the telephone questionnaire. Now, it would be a really good idea for you to compare the telephone questionnaire with the application they fill out at the unit, okay? Compare them, look for discrepancies. People will say things over the phone, and if they're not telling the truth, when they do the actual rental application, they often forget what they said, and they put something different. So if you see a discrepancy between the actual rental application and the telephone interview form, that's a pretty good sign that something may be awry here. Let's see, another thing I want to tell you is this. When you get the actual application, guys, when you run the application, always verify references. In other words, job history. You want to verify they actually live, or excuse me, actually work at the place they said they're working at. Also, you would definitely want to call the current and prior landlord, okay? And the reason is this is I've had situations in the past where an applicant would put something on the application that didn't seem to make sense, or it didn't jive with the actual telephone questionnaire. So what I do is I call the current landlord, and here's a trick I learned. You can write this down if you want. I would call them, let's say the rent I'm asking is $2,000. And the rent that they were quoting me that they've been paying is $1,500. So they're just moving up, right? And it didn't make sense based on what they made or something they said. What I would do is I would call the current landlord and say, it looks like your current tenant, Jane Doe, she's telling me on her application that she's paying $1,000 a month. Can you tell me, has she been paying that rent on faithfully every month? And they'll say, oh yeah, $1,000 a month. Yep, she's a faithful payer. Well, I know that the tenant already put on there $1,500. Well, right away, I also know this. The person they gave me on the application, either A, might not be the current landlord, they just basically made somebody up, or B, the current landlord wants to get rid of them so badly that they'll say anything, that they'll say yes to anything. So be careful with that trick. I had one time where actually I just smelled the rat, guys. I called the current landlord, prior landlord, decided I would go deeper. Now remember the tenant, the application you're going to run is going to have living history. Generally, that's going to go back 5 years. So I will look up the owners of those properties going back 5 years, and I started this. I did this one time. Called the one 3 guys back, 4 guys back, 5 guys back. Finally, I found somebody that actually would open up and be straight and say, "Look, Mr. Wilson, you don't want to rent to that person. Here's what they did to me, and by golly, I'm glad I didn't rent to them." In any case, just a really neat trick you can use to confirm that you're actually getting the right information. Okay. Before I move on, let me just look and see if there's anything else. It talks about the rent, security deposits, screening, interviewing. We did all that. In another session, I'll talk about the fact that you should have a separate LLC for the management phase of your business. Okay. And we'll talk about that separately. So let's do this. What I want to do now is move into the next module. Okay, we got about another. We're gonna. This session will end probably at the 1/4 or 10 till. So the next part of this is this. You're going to have potential applicants, potential tenants that are receiving subsidies. Okay, the most common form of subsidy is what's called Section 8. All right. Over the years, I've rented to a lot of Section 8 tenants. Section 8 has to do with the tenant, not the property. Okay. Hey, real quick, I'm sorry. Let me check questions here real quick, guys, before we move on. Chat, we got some more here. Okay, here we go. So let me catch up with these. This is Shirley. Shirley Ingersoll. Good to see you, Shirley. Welcome aboard, by the way. Are you here in Cali or over the border in Nevada? So good question there, huh? Okay, so Shirley's asking, how far back do you check verify info for rentals? So Shirley, there's different sources of checking applicants. Again, public record, living history, job history, credit record. Some of the most common ones will actually go back, 3 years, 5 years. Some of them actually go back 10 years. I generally want to go back as far as I can. I don't want just to last year. I don't even want 3 years. I want 5 years actually myself. So whatever service you're using, there's multiple services, tenant screening services. Ask them how far they go back, and whichever one meets your requirements, that's the one you go with. Okay. Let's see, Rajan. Hey, Rajan, good to see you too, buddy. Welcome aboard, man. Let's see, this is from Jesse. Jesse, good to see you too. Welcome back from your trip. Okay, good to see you. So Jesse's asking, I want to be clear, is this part of the investor agent training program? Is this the weekly Q&A going over the training module? Yes. So Jesse, in these weekly sessions, it's basically like open mic. So you're going through your training. So tonight's session might not necessarily match up with whatever module you're in. That's not how this works. Those modules are learning modules, you independent study. On these webinars, you tell me what you want to discuss. So tonight's session happens to be property management, which we do touch on, by the way, in the investor agent training program, but we got a lot of questions on this, so that's why the night's session is focused on property management. You're definitely going to get contacted, Jesse, you're going to work with landlords buying rentals. They're going to ask you, can you manage my properties? And eventually, I think you should say yes. Right now, you should at least understand what's involved with it so you can have intelligent conversations with them. And more importantly, make referrals if you need to, if you don't want to do it yourself. So a very pertinent subject. Half your investor class are going to be landlords, okay? let's see here. Let's see, this is Rajan. What did I miss? I want to be on Fox News. So Raj, we can't unfortunately repeat everything we just went over. It started at 4 o'clock Pacific time, but you're going to get the recording on this. So you can watch the recording tomorrow and replay it, go back and forth, fast forward, take notes and things like that. Okay, that's all the questions to date, so far at this point in time. Okay, next thing is this. Section 8, let's just talk about that for a moment. I've had hundreds of Section 8 tenants over the years. In the beginning, I didn't do that. I did not rent a Section 8. I didn't have the need to. I didn't even know that it existed, quite frankly. The properties I bought, I would rent to just mainstream renters, people who were not receiving subsidies. And then what happened is my mentors kept saying, you're missing a lot of opportunities. You should be investing in the cities too, not just in the outlying areas. So I started doing that, and I came to realize, well, one of those applicants, they were receiving a Section 8 subsidy. So the first tenant I ever chose who was receiving a Section 8 subsidy, and her name was Stacy, and this goes back a lot of years, guys, probably more than 20 years. I actually had her as a tenant for almost 10 years. She and her husband, and they had 3 wonderful, beautiful kids, ended up being some of my best tenants ever. And I didn't know that in the beginning. What I thought was, well, let me at least see what this is all about. So I said, Stacy, I think you seem like a great person. We ran the application, everything checks out. I just don't know anything about Section 8. So she kind of fed me through the process, and it was really actually kind of an interesting learning experience. So it turns out when you rent to Section 8, the HUD, Housing Urban Development, is providing funding for families that need a subsidy. They need help paying their rent. So they have to go through a screening process to be a Section 8 qualified tenant to be approved to receive a subsidy. Some people are receiving the full month's rent. Some people are receiving a partial month's rent. You need to know that up front. What are they receiving? They're receiving a certain portion of the rent or the entire thing. Okay. Now let's say they're already pre-approved. They're ready to rock and roll. You still run their application. You still want security deposit, and you still want first month's rent. But here's the kicker. Some Section 8 offices, like there's federal level, state, county, local. Okay, 4 different possible levels for housing urban development. Some of them are telling their Section 8 tenants that they should not give you security deposit. Well, obviously I disagree because I'm an owner and I want to protect myself. So what we say is we require, it's a requirement. There's no option there. If you can't pay a security deposit, you can't rent the unit. I don't care if you're Section 8 or not. That's our rule, okay? And it's perfectly legal to do that too, by the way. Now, when it comes to the rent, what you can't do is you cannot take their first month's rent, especially if Section 8 is paying the whole rent. Section 8 is going to give you the first month's rent, okay? Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, that's guaranteed money. And for the most part, that's true, okay? But Section 8 has changed over the years, okay? So one thing you need to be aware of is this with Section 8 is they're going to send somebody out, an inspector, to inspect your unit to make sure your unit passes basic occupancy codes, okay? You know, smoke detectors, locking doors, windows that are safe, no chipped or peeling paint. Basically, it's safe, clean, and reliable and up to code, right? If it doesn't pass the inspection, you, the owner, had to decide, are you going to fix these things and still rent to that tenant, or not fix them and not rent to Section 8 tenants, okay? You got to decide that. And I think you should decide yes, just to check it out, because I can tell you in some areas, guys, you're receiving higher rents for Section 8 approved units than you are for non-Section 8 approved units. It's crazy, but that's just what's happening. Not true with single family homes though. In most cases, in most areas of our country, single family homes are not getting as much rent from Section 8 as they are on the open market. So you got to make that determination. In any case, you got to pass the inspection. Well, as long as you take to fix those problems that they find, you're not receiving rent. Your lease hasn't started, okay? So it behooves you to move quickly and solve any material defects in the unit, okay? And then what happens is then they process everything, and some Section 8 offices, guys, are behind 2 and 3 months. So you're not even going to receive your first check for months later. Now you get everything paid retroactively. Your first check might be several $1,000s, but during the interim, you've got to pay all your bills, right? For that property taxes, insurance, things like that, mortgage payments. The other thing is this is, you're having people stay in your property, right, that have not paid rent yet because Section 8 is behind, and you might not get the rent for 3 or 4 months. You got to be okay with it. So not only is your property not making money, but you got people using it and basically doing wear and tear, right? In any case, long story short is this. I don't do Section 8 anymore. It's not, I don't have a problem with the program. The thing I have is the federal government, they determine what they perceive to be marketable rental rates for the different areas, okay? In very high priced areas, you're getting more money for your rentals. In low priced areas, you're getting less money. But years ago, what they did is they decided in their infinite wisdom, and not trying to be offensive here, it's just what happened, that single family homes should not command as much rent as an apartment rental, because the single family homes, the tenants are being asked to pay, gas, electric, water, what have you, and it's more money to heat a house, a single family home, than it costs to heat an apartment, which is true. But market rents are not determined by how much it costs to heat a property. It's determined based on market value, market rents, okay? So what they did is they actually lowered the rates they were paying on single family homes. And I thought, well, that's ludicrous. So as those leases came due, I did not renew those leases. And what I did is I remodeled those properties and sold them or put them back on the open market for non-Section 8 tenants. That's what I did with the single families. On the apartments, however, I had many apartments that were being rented for more than I was getting on the prevailing rates on the open market. So I kept those tenants in there, okay? By the way, there's a few more things you need to be aware of. Back in the old days, people who were receiving Section 8 subsidy, and they had to pay a portion themselves, like Section 8 paid a portion, they paid a portion. If they didn't pay their portion, all you had to do was start the eviction process, notify the Section 8 office, and the Section 8 office would withhold the Section 8 subsidy for the tenant if they moved out and they could not rent another property until they paid you back. So they're a great advantage, but they stopped doing that across most of the states and most of the counties and towns or municipalities. So what happened is, if you had to evict a Section 8 tenant, there was no leverage. They would just move on and go take advantage of the next sucker, right? But you would lose your money. The property could be dirty, all kinds of stuff. So it just was not as favorable to me as it was in the earlier days. That's my personal choice. It's not like that everywhere, but my understanding is that's been a kind of a common thing, right? So this always generates a lot of questions. So let's go to the questions here. Let's see here. Let's see what other people are saying about Section 8. Okay, this is from Jesse. Thanks. I'm into it. Just didn't see the course on my current module. I get it now. Thanks. Can't wait till KW starts doing. Yeah, I agree, Jesse. Okay, this is Jorge. Hey, Jorge. Jorge used to live in Syracuse, and by the way, Jorge, I'm going to be up there teaching, by the way, another couple weeks. And you mentioned you were from Virginia too at one point. I want to talk to you about that. Anyways, back to Syracuse, New York. About 3 years back, when I owned rentals there, Section 8 paid several $100s per month more than market rate in both single and multifamily. This was in low C-class areas. Also, Section 8 paid me directly, and the tenant had to pay me their portion directly. Did you just say that Section 8 rates changed? How do we deny Section 8 if we wanted? So yes, Section 8 is not a protected class, Jorge. You can decide you don't want to accept Section 8 because it's just more paperwork, more labor on your part. And by the way, a lot of property management companies, if you tell them you have Section 8 tenants, they're going to charge you more to manage those units because it's more work for them. In fact, my property management, we did that. We charge as much as 12% gross rent on a monthly basis for Section 8 units because it just takes more time. All the more paperwork, more inspections, it's just crazy. So in any case, yeah, that's what I was saying, Jorge. Some parts of the country, man, it's like screaming right along, everything's fine. Other parts, they just mess things up, which leads me to one more thing here. We're going to start to wrap this up, is this. We talked about when you have to evict people, okay? With Section 8, there's no special rules. You go through the same exact process, okay? But things to look out for are this. When you want to do a rent raise, I'll just leave it at this. Don't just assume you can do a rent raise with Section 8, okay? Number one, you have to notify the tenant and the Section 8 office well before 2 months before the anniversary date of your lease. And what I found out is I would send in my request and I never hear from them. And the lease anniversary date would pass, and I'd say, "What about my rent increase?" And they'd say, "Well, we know. What are you talking about?" I said, "I sent the form in." "Oh, we never saw that." "Well, you got to wait another year. They're not going to let you do it retroactively." So I learned in the past to send in my rent request 6 months in advance, follow up 5 months in advance, follow up 4 months in advance, 3 months in advance, schedule an appointment with the administrator, and demand that they review your request and process it. That's how much of a pain in the butt it was to get rent increases. Okay. In any case, I probably just scared the dickens out of a lot of you. So back to this. I want to talk about one more thing real quick before we go, which is charitable organizations. Charitable organizations are a great way to serve the community and also help people who need a hand up to rent some of the units. So churches will pay rent for tenants when they get in a jam. I've also used organizations like Catholic Charities and Jewish Community Center to sponsor refugee families from like Burma and Nepal. Even back in the 90s, we would sponsor families from Bosnia. Remember war-torn Bosnia? They would come over and we'd rent them our units. And like Catholic Charities, for example, would pay the deposit and first month's rent for them. And just like the refugees from Burma and Nepal, they would have to take over after the first months. Turns out they were some of our best tenants. In fact, one building was 75% rented to refugee families, and it was awesome. We made more money on that building, actually. In any case, you'll get on their list. They'll learn that you're a good landlord, and they'll contact you when they have special situations. You can bring on a good tenant who just maybe went through a divorce or lost a spouse in an accident or something like that. And guys, they just need to stay a hand up. That's what they need. So I'm a big fan of those. All right, real quick, we're going to wrap this up on this last section here. Charitable protected classes. So you can Google the federal law for discrimination. What's called protected classes. The obvious ones are sex, race, religion, marital status, handicap status, things like that. The thing what I want you to write down is this though: each state can have its own protected classes in addition to the federal level. They can't conflict with the federal level, but they can add to it. Okay, you definitely need to know what they are. And the bottom line is it doesn't matter anyways, because you're not going to discriminate against anybody because it doesn't make sense. The only really thing that matters to you as a landlord, as an investor, as an agent who's investing yourself or representing investors is somebody's ability to pay. That's the number one thing. That's it. Okay. So that's the short version of protected classes. In any case, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me check for questions one more time here. I think we're all cleared up. So I appreciate you participating. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here in a second. But I want to say thank you and also look forward to seeing you on Monday, this coming Monday, June 3rd. I will be doing that one from the San Jose Gateway office, okay? And remember, on the 11th, we got special guests talking about trust, okay? So you guys take care of yourselves. Hope you like this new format. If you could send a message and say, "Hey, Gary, I like the new format," that would be awesome. We want to make sure whatever changes we make are suitable for you, the students. So God bless you and your families, guys, and we will see you next week. All right, take care, and we'll see